Hello, everyone. Welcome into Guerilla Hockey with JJ and Jesse. I am JJ. He is Jesse. We're happy to have you here to talk some Avalanche hockey with us. The time has come, Jesse. The regular season is behind us, and the playoffs are here. This is what you work all year long for, both players, media, Avalanche fans alike. This is the time. This is the money-making moment.
Dude, it's I was just conducting an interview for This Is Fun. I'll save who the guest is, but I think you're all going to like it, especially if you're tuning into this pod. And I was telling them last year going into the playoffs, I'll be honest, I was ready for the season to be done. It had been a 5.5 week off season, and then we were right back into the thick of everything. It had been a really weird up and down year. There were a lot of injuries. There was the constant uncertainty around Gabe Landeskog before eventually coming to a head right before the playoffs and us getting some clarity. Then you had I was ready for I was just like, I'm done. By the time they got to Game 7, the roster was so depleted. You knew they didn't have the horses to beat Dallas. You were like, don't prolong this. Let's just all go home. Doesn't that sound nice? Let's just go home. I don't feel that way this year. I am really amped up for the playoffs. I'm really excited that you and I have a couple. I'm so excited to have Mark in Winnipeg this weekend to get to experience a playoff atmosphere like we're going to experience. I'm so jacked up for this. We talk about it all the time doing the job that we do. I don't root for teams really anymore. But in this instance, I'm up for 4 different cities. Let's do this 2 more months right in the thick of it. I'm really hoping that the Avs can go on a bit of a deep run here because I just think it'd be a lot of fun. This feels like it'd be a fun year. The league is so wide open. I'm super amped up for the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of that. It's like the playoffs is almost a part of the job you do for free. You know what I mean, right? The regular season, it kind of gets to be a little bit of a grind at times, but the playoffs, it's fun. This is why we do it, to live these moments and experience some excitement. But that's kind of the major question is how deep can they actually make it? Because if we're done, we look back this time next week, and it's like, oh, wow, the Avalanche might be on their way out. Then it's a completely different story. Not as fun.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, just kind of half as a joke, but what you're talking about, the players do this part for free.
Yeah.
The players have collected their final paychecks as of yesterday. The players are not getting paid until September from here on out. They get paid. They don't get paid during the playoffs. Isn't considered part of the season. That's how great the NHL playoffs are. Players are like, okay, I'll do it for free. Let's do this. But no, you're 100% right. That is the big question. I don't want to go too far down. That's the big question. How far can they go? It would really be a bummer to be sitting here. Let's see, what's today?
Today's Friday.
The 19th.
In a week, we'll be getting ready for Game 2, or Game 3, sorry.
Back here in Denver,
And then Game 4 will be Sunday. So, there's going to be a lot more narrative by the time 1 week from now comes along. We're going to know a lot better on how we're feeling about the future of playoff hockey here this season. And that's kind of what I wanted to start with, if we're ready.
I'm ready. I didn't want to jump the gun on you.
Well, I don't want to jump the gun on your intros. I know you like to go talk about God knows what on some intros.
I told JJ, and I apologize to everyone listening. I told him this morning, I said, I got a lot to say, which I'm sure you're all like, you don't have a lot to say every time you open your mouth. But yeah, I think this is how psyched. Anyone who's been around me the last couple of weeks knows that if the last couple of weeks, the final 10 games of the season has felt like 6 months. I've just been looking forward to getting to this part of the season. I'm amped up for it. The regular season's officially done. No more questions. We know who everyone's playing. We know the Sharks are now the worst NHL team in modern history.
Well, and what's the conversation? It's always around Thanksgiving, right? And you can even probably back up a couple weeks closer to the start of November. We knew the Avalanche were a playoff team since way back then. So it's kind of like, okay, since November, we're just kind of sitting here like, all right, when do we get to the playoffs?
Right, and even more to that point, with the way it all shook out, I thought the Avs were going to finish a little bit higher and have home ice in the first round, but they didn't. But to your point, go back to November. We were like, all right, it's Winnipeg or Dallas probably.
Yeah.
Nothing about that has changed.
I love not love, how the Avalanche can finish with more points than Edmonton, but Edmonton gets home ice, the Avalanche do not.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, just because of the way the divisions shake out and the way they like their first round matchups.
I don't think that's accurate.
Let me double check it.
Because the Avs, I think once you step outside of your division, it goes based on overall standings.
So, yeah, I'm right. Edmonton ended with 104. The Avs have 107.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think that means that Edmonton would have home ice, is my point.
Well, I mean, first round, sorry.
Oh.
How they get to have first round home ice.
Oh.
Because the Avalanche are starting off on the road.
Well, because that was, I get what you're saying. I'm sorry. Because that was the one interesting narrative from last night's game that I thought was really overlooked. Had Edmonton won that game last night in regulation, they would have solidified home ice for themselves against the team that eliminated them a couple years ago. Both teams have to meet in the Western Conference Final again, but I thought that was interesting. With how many players they sat, it's like this wasn't a completely meaningless game. Like, you know, if we fast forward 6 weeks and suddenly you and I are gearing up to go to Game 7 at Ball Arena between Avs and Oilers, like, that is a little bit funny, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it was funny that they're like, hey, we're going to sit everybody except our starting goalie. We're going to leave him out there to dry so we could get him yanked in the first period, right?
So bizarre. I was just picturing that going, like, him pushing off across and exploding a hammy, and suddenly Calvin Picker's your starter.
Yeah, my mind, I've got tunnel vision right now, so I'm only focused on the first round. So maybe that's where the communication wire crossing happened. So I don't know how confident I am just yet on experiencing more than the first round for this Avalanche team. I mean, you look at the way they ended the season, not the ideal way to end the season. And I know results don't necessarily matter. We saw the 2022 team also kind of stumble the last couple games of the year. But we hear from Jared Bednar all the time. It's about the process. Results are whatever. We want to make sure we're playing the right way. And I don't think Jared Bednar can sit here with us today, if he so chose, and tell us honestly that he thinks the Avalanche have played the right way over this final stretch of games.
So, like you said, the results part of it. Let's go back to the 2022 year, because that is an easy one to point to, because the Avs finished the year poorly.
Mm-hmm.
They were like 13 points up in the division. They had it sewn up. That really was as close to like playing out the string as you can get being a playoff team. Like, you see teams that do that every year that are missing the playoffs by a lot. Just phone it in for the last 10 days. Like, who really cares?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, to me, a lot of what the Avs were doing a couple seasons ago. They were like, look, we're playing at 50%. We're trying not to get hurt. I'm not finishing that check. I'm not wearing that contact in the corner. I don't want to get hurt. What's concerning this year, what's concerning is that it doesn't look like they have the effort dialed down. It looks like there's not, the sharpness isn't there. The chemistry doesn't quite feel right. And they're missing the ability, because that was a thing with that 2022 team. They had the one game against St. Louis that they got them feeling good. And then game one of the playoffs, they just ramped it right up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it feels like this team is missing the ability to do. Flip the switch. All right, we're going now. We know what to do. We know where we're supposed to be. We know what the details are supposed to look like. We just didn't have it dialed up to this level. Now, this leadership group, they've been there before. You got a lot of Stanley Cup champions on this roster. I also don't, I wouldn't be surprised if we show up to game one and it's like, oh, shit, there they are. That's the team. Because, again, we've seen this core do that before.
Mm-hmm.
What I guess I'm saying is, what's concerning is I don't really feel like we've seen them do it this year with any kind of consistency. And that's the part that, to your point, might have Jared Bednar a little bit like, ooh, this doesn't feel like it doesn't pass.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some heartbreaking losses the last couple games, last couple weeks. You saw the beatdown against the same Winnipeg Jets that they're about to be playing here in the first round. And you've heard a lot of, I don't know, I've heard some discussion about exhaustion, both mentally and physically. I've heard, some lapses in defensive zone coverage, which I feel like at this point in the season, those should be details that you're really ironing out and not so much bringing up anew. So yeah, I don't feel super confident. I mean, I would love for a long playoff run. I'm definitely hoping for a long playoff run here. But if we're looking at a 5-6 game series in Winnipeg's favor, I don't think I'll be even the least bit surprised.
I told you guys the other day at morning skate, I do think I would be surprised if this Avs team went out in. I would definitely be surprised if they went out in 4. I would still be like, man, I thought they were a lot better than that if they went out in 5. Anything from Jets winning in 6 to Avs winning in 5 wouldn't surprise me. I know this is on your topic list for a second.
Go ahead.
Well, but I don't think it's whatever 2 words you just used. What did you say? Exhaustion, fatigue. I think it's frustration. And I'm going to circle back to that in a second, but I want to ask you, what's your overall assessment of the regular season?
Well, we kind of went over this last week, right? It felt like a very successful season in a lot of different ways. I don't think I've changed too much on that, but I just feel like, maybe this team peaked a little bit early. And it's hard to say that because if you really look at it, the time that they peaked was right after the trade deadline when they had no business peaking. They had more trying to figure each other out, nail down the chemistry that you're saying is a little bit off, and really getting everybody on the same page. Now that they've had the chance to do it, it feels like they've taken a step backwards. So I still think overall this season has been successful. It's been fun to watch. Nathan McKinnon having a great year, Mikko Rantanen having a great year. And I think by my standards, which I don't think I necessarily judge the season on if they win the Stanley Cup or not. If they don't win the Stanley Cup, it's a giant failure. I think they've had to navigate some issues that they never really foresaw or haven't really had much familiarity with in the past. We're about to get into a goaltender conversation. And then later on, we're going to get into another goaltender conversation about Pavel Francouz and how they've had to navigate that surprise coming into the year that was very unforeseen. And I think they've done a really good job of navigating those problems. I think they've gotten themselves out of some pretty big holes and have strung together a formidable team. But is it strong enough to really persevere through this tough stretch of the playoffs? Because we know the hockey ramps up. We know it's quote unquote big boy hockey at this frame. And you can't rely so much on your power play like they have this year. You can't rely so much on your top guys. Sure, you can rely on them, but it's got to be top to bottom chipping in. And I don't know, based off what we've talked about all year long, that I feel like they're firing on all the right cylinders right now.
See, and I think the only real part of that I would disagree with is the peaking too early. I don't feel like this team has peaked. Like that to me is the part that all right, well, on one hand, I think there's a much higher level that they can go to. On the other hand, I think it's concerning that we haven't seen that level of play, because even right after the trade deadline, almost felt a little bit like the beginning of the season, where we got a bunch of new guys in here, new faces, guys are energized, guys are just kind of running off adrenaline, doing what they do, best, making skill plays. And then once it's settled into systems and making sure that guys are in the right spot, that's where it's felt like it's just been up and down and up and down.
Well, it's wild. So in preparation for today's podcast, I went back and watched all the condensed games of Avalanche versus Winnipeg throughout the season. Only 3. It wasn't too daunting of a task, but it was wild seeing how many names were in these games that they aren't going to be heading into the playoffs with. Sam Malinsky. I know Caleb Jones is currently on the roster, but then, Thomas Tatar showed his face, Freddie Olofsson, of course, Ryan Johansson. So it's a completely different team than they even started this year with, and we know how much turnaround there's been since the Cup team. So, yeah, I think there's, again, just a lot to navigate this year, and they've done a pretty solid job of juggling all of that, but now it's kind of you throw in a whole nother ball into that juggle set.
And dude, you know, you're spurring a couple thoughts for me, and one, again, I'm not on paper, I absolutely believe this Avalanche team is capable of winning a Stanley Cup. On paper. So I don't want to already be like, well, next year, the Avs need a quiet summer and a quiet season next year where you don't have two players going to player assistance. You don't have your captain doing and not that he's doing it, but like, is he coming back? Is he not? Is he coming back? Is he not? Okay, he's not. We know he's not. Not for a whole year. You know, you don't have two players who come in that you then realize these do not work here culturally or on the ice. Like, they've been trying to solve this 2C problem. Was it Alex Newhook? No, that wasn't working. We got it. Like, I love the Casey Middlestat thing. I think it's been a tough adjustment for him. I think as the pressure is ramped up, he's never had to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think he's struggled just a little bit to keep with that intensity picking up and up and up. I think they'll go into next year. You feel pretty good about your roster. You got a couple guys you got to make decisions on. You know, Drew N, what are you doing on the back end? Josh Manson, Sean Walker, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, I think they're going to be able to have a normal offseason. Bring in a couple guys. You have a much clearer idea on Gabe Landeskog. And the one thing that we don't have built into the rundown, and I just want to put this out there because I've seen the sentiment coming back up. Are you laughing because I looked?
Yeah.
Well, John came in here and he thought that the interview that I was doing, he was sitting out there. He's like, oh, well, your guys' cadence was kind of like loose, so I thought you guys were done. So he came to the window and he went like this, and I was like, all good. And he thought that was me saying we were done. So when you looked, I didn't know if that was John again, like, oh, what's going on?
No, just me thinking about what you said, getting distracted by the various decorations we have. We got a bottle of Febreze, some beer bottles, just things that are catching my eye while I think about what you're saying.
Active
listening.
Well, thank you. I've started in recent weeks to get they need to name a captain. I love Gabe, but this team needs a captain. Look, if you're a fan out there and you're not happy with the leadership, genuinely, do you think replacing the A on Nathan McKinnon's chest or Cale Makar's chest with a C is going to change the type of leader they are? It's not. I asked someone earlier this season who would have good insight on this. And I said, do you think the team is considered naming a captain? And I was told that there was consideration, that it would have been very publicly made, this is a temporary captain. We were naming an interim captain. And I was told they had someone in mind. But that ultimately the decision that they came to was switching a letter shouldn't change the type of leader you are. Captains are chosen, leaders are established because of the way they lead. Not because it's like, hey, we think that you should be an important leader, so go lead this group. It takes a certain type of person. I believe, oh no, they did finally name Jacob Trouba. There's teams all over the league who don't have captains, and that's not because you're like, oh, we don't want to put the spotlight on anyone. It's no, we need someone to emerge and be the leader. It's also why you look around the league and there's guys like Boone Jenner who are the captains in Columbus. It's not because he's the best player on the ice. It's because he's a great leader and he understands how to talk to people and how to communicate. Again, I think the Avs have some really strong leaders in that room, but none of them are Gabe Landeskog. I think, for my money, Gabe Landeskog is the best captain in the league in terms of he's the best on-ice leader of anyone in the NHL. Maybe, a guy like Sidney Crosby, who's been around a little bit longer. But again, even a guy like Joe Sakic, he was more of a do as I do, not as I say. And if I have something to say, if I speak up, people will listen. I think that's the kind of guy Cale Makar is. Everyone sees what he does. Everyone wants to emulate it. And when he speaks up, people listen because he doesn't speak up a lot. Nathan MacKinnon is the emotional engine of this team. The team goes as Nathan MacKinnon does. And, he has that kind of like, I flew back from having my number retired last night in Halifax, and I showed up for the ECHL portion of training camp. But you know what? I grabbed a green jersey and I jumped on a line because I have no excuse to not be getting on the ice and getting ready for the season. They're not the link between the locker room and the coaches like Gabe Landeskog is. They're not someone who has a pulse on what the emotion is in that room and exactly what every guy in there needs. Gabe Landeskog is the type of leader that when he's done with hockey, whether it's next year or 15 years from now, I don't necessarily know if he's going to go into coaching. He will do something, and he will be very, very successful at it.
Mm-hmm.
So simply saying, Cale Makar is the captain for playoffs, Nathan MacKinnon, playoff captain, that doesn't change anything.
You're not going to get a different version of either of those
right,
guys.
Right, and that's maybe the best way of saying what I just spent 5 minutes trying to say. But you know what I mean? Like that's the reality. This is the group. Gabe Landeskog's around. He's not on the ice. His voice only can go so far. You have other two leaders who are meant, and Mikko Rantanen, if you count him, when you don't have a captain on the ice.
And see, this is where I'm thinking. Sorry to interrupt you, but
please interrupt me. I've been talking for too long.
The Avalanche have been so intentional in the last 3-4 years on the guys they bring in, being former captains. Here's one thing I didn't even realize. I was looking back at Alexander Georgiev's durability over the years, right? And I found a little clip of where he did hurt his knee, and he actually missed a little bit of a hockey game for 2 minutes. He said, "Coach, my knee's back in place. Put me back in," and they did. And in that clip where you see him getting hurt, mucking it up right in front of him is Miles Wood playing for the opposition. Miles Wood on New Jersey, Alexander Georgiev was in New York, and Miles Wood was wearing an A on his sweatshirt, which is something I never even knew about Miles Wood. He doesn't strike me as much of a leader, but obviously has leadership qualities in a different room. So the Avalanche have been so intentional on bringing in guys that can be leaders. You hear Zach Parise when he first came in. Also a former leader himself, but says the leadership in this room is amazing. Like I'm going to contribute where I can, but they're in place.
Yeah.
Like there's not much need for more leadership in this room.
Right.
Right. You can go all the way down the lineup and keep naming guys of that example.
Taves, Cogliano, Logan O'Connor. Like there's and those 3 more guys in addition to the guys that you've already named. And so to me, leadership isn't the issue. They're missing Gabe Landeskog. He's a
player, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
He's one of the best players in the league. And then you stack on top of that he is an outstanding leader and that he knows how to communicate with guys and knows when guys need to be picked up and knows, hey, Jared, we got it. Leave us alone. We got it. And Jared knows he can trust. Like, it's just the leaders they have in that room are all meant to complement Gabe Landeskog. It's why managers have assistant managers. Everyone here has worked for someone that's like, gosh, why is that guy the manager? It's the same type of thing. If you don't have the right people, simply naming them the manager suddenly isn't going to make them better at their job. You need to have the right people in place and the right people supporting them. That's what the Avs have built. And suddenly the person at the top has been out of commission for 2 years. So I get fan sentiment of, that's an easy place to point. Gosh, they're missing Gabe Landeskog, their captain. They must need a captain. No, they need Gabe Landeskog. And so they're not going to name it a captain. And even if they do come out tomorrow and say we're naming a captain for the playoffs, it's not going to change the leadership. I don't even want to say issue because I don't think it's an issue. But the perceived issue maybe of lack of leadership, simply slapping a C on McKinnon's chest, Makar's chest, Taves, Cogliano, doesn't make a difference.
So I guess where are you going with that? Are you trying to say that the mindset of this group is just different, not necessarily better or worse?
It's a different
just a
makeup
different approach.
And if I'm going to go to hypothetical end. Let's say they go and do it again. It's going to look dramatically different than it did 2 years ago. That team 2 years ago was a well-oiled machine. No one was stopping them. They were an absolute buzzsaw. They went 9-1 on the road. They swept with their backup goaltender, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the Edmonton Oilers. Embarrassed them.
Led for a snoozer of a Western Conference final.
Right. it was so dominant that it was like, that kind of sucked.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to look like that. I think if they're going to do it, if they win this year, look out for this team winning like 3 more, because that will be like an ugly, fighting through the trenches, crawling over barbed wire type of Stanley Cup win, led by, it'll probably take Nathan McKinnon doing otherworldly things, and that's going to be the leadership. Hey, I'm carrying us here. You guys take care of all the other details. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying it's how it's going to play out, but like that's what it's going to be. It's going to look and feel very different is the overall point that I was trying to make.
Yeah, I feel you. So let's get into, I guess, the elephant in the Avalanche land room, right? And that's the goaltending. I think especially going up against a guy like Connor Hellebuck, you really get a little bit more nervous for goaltending, because if you're comparing goalies and goalies, you go Winnipeg all day long.
Yeah.
So that being said, where are we feeling about Alexander Georgiev heading into this first round of the playoffs? Because I know he's been shaky, and this stretch hasn't looked great on him. But as I kind of mentioned, there are some things throughout this bad stretch that I think are not on him, and other things that need to be addressed. But to the naked eye, Alexander Georgiev does not look like he's in his best form heading into the playoffs.
So this is what I was going to bring up a minute ago when I said frustration. No one has told me this. This is my speculation based off what you and I see and hear every day. I think the group has lost complete faith in Alexander Georgiev. I think it's been really up and down for him this year. And to me, what sucks is that there's been moments where it's like, big moment for him. He's going to be able to take this and get things on the right track. And he hasn't. You and I have talked it several times, argued even back and forth about quality of goals against. Because you are correctly passionate about the fact that for a goal to happen, it's not just on the goaltender. There's a lot of things that have to happen before it even gets to that point. And there's even stuff that is against Vegas. You and I were in Vegas. Those was it 4 goals?
Mm-hmm.
None of them were bad. Like on Georgiev. If you take each one of them in a vacuum, if you know nothing about Georgiev's history, his recent games, what was happening in that game, you watch each goal, you're like, what's he going to do? William Karlsson, a one-time 40-goal scorer, is standing 8 feet from the net, getting to throw head fakes, and, whatever. He's going to get a good look. Hey, that's a bad turnover. Hey, he doesn't get the puck out of zone. All that stuff is true. You have a goaltender. You pay a goaltender to stand back there because you're never going to be perfect for 60 minutes. Never. That the Avs Lightning Game 6 cup-clinching game was as perfect, near perfect of a game as you're going to see. And there was still a 2-on-1 breakdown in the third with Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov both on their strong side. Darcy Kemper had to come up with a big save because there was a breakdown. And he did. That, to me, is what Alexander Georgiev hasn't done for a month. He's made a bunch of saves he's supposed to make. I'm having a hard time remembering more than like 2 saves that it's like, wow, he had no business making that save in the last month. You can't have every mistake is in the back of your net. You just that's the part to me where you need a goalie to bail. It's unrealistic to people like, you need a goalie to steal a game. You don't need that. It's nice when that happens. That is not that's not a fair expectation. I think it's a fair expectation to say, Jared told us the other night in Vegas, got to save one for the guys.
Mm-hmm.
We're on our heels a bit here. They're pushing. You and I talk about it all the time. There's 2 teams out there trying to win. 2 NHL teams trying to win. There's going to be momentum swings, and we got to be able to fall back on a goalie for one save every now and then.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's a bit dramatic saying he hasn't made that save, but
absolutely,
it's just,
and 2 is a completely ridiculous estimate.
Sure,
but
yeah. But there's just one more that he needed to make that he couldn't make, and I think that's kind of the difference I'm seeing. I remember when he first arrived in Colorado, I watched all of his condensed games. I stick to the condensed ones,
right?
To get a real good idea about who he was, and what I noticed in him that I'm not really seeing this year was his strength at the first shot. It was so hard to beat him with the first shot. It was unreal. Like, his reflexes and his reaction time was unmatched when he got here.
Mm-hmm.
that's something that somehow slipped away from him. And I now we're seeing some first shot goals trickle by him, or they sneak it into a hole that you're like that's when you're kind of throwing your hands up and saying, "Come on, Georgi, this can't happen."
Yeah.
So that's the difference I'm seeing. And if you really look at it, I think that's 100% a confidence issue.
I was going to ask
We
you what
talked
you
about
thought.
that in Vegas. Like, I think that's purely confidence and maybe a little bit of just, hey, I got to get back to that hard work I was doing to make my reactions as quick as they were, that maybe you slip away from because you're trying to address different areas of your game, right? So
and so here's where I'm going to be Team Georgie. I think the Avs they don't have faith in what's happening back there. And when I watch them right now, to me, the way they're trying to combat their lack of faith in a save being, a big save is, all right, well, we got to go outscore it. And they're selling out for offense. It's a little bit of, oversimplification of it, but I think it's one way or another. It has not been, all right, well, then we got to really tighten it down on D, which is the response that you would think.
See, I don't know. I feel like I've heard that response. I've heard Jared over the last several weeks address the D zone coverage.
See, I think it's being addressed, but when I think they're getting on the ice, that to me, when I watched last night against a very depleted, Edmonton held a ton of guys out. That to me was what I noticed. I was like, you guys aren't sharp in your own end at all, and there's guys getting loose behind everybody or behind four guys like crazy. And so that tells me that guys aren't where they're supposed to be. And I don't know if that's guys trying to leave the zone early, if they're cheating a little bit. And then here's the one other thing I'll say. I think when it comes to, Georgiev's lack of confidence. And again, I'm not trying to be clickbaity or hot take or anything like that. But do you remember this was probably a month and a half ago, and the Avs had a comeback win, and someone asked Georgie in the locker room after about the comebacks. And hey, does that make it easier for you? Knowing and the first thing out of his mouth said, yeah, it'd be nice if we could score the first goal every now and then. And then he kind of just went about his answer. I can't help but tie that a little bit to what Cale said. And then, just to kind of that overall sentiment of, we in the media have had the conversation of like, can they get out of the first 4 minutes without giving up a goal? And so to me, I almost wonder if it's a little bit of like Georgie saying, well, I'm not getting any help. And the Avs are saying, and the players are saying, well, it doesn't matter. Every shot's going in anyways. And it's leading, again, and this is purely speculative, but like, I don't know, is it leading to some friction where he doesn't think they're doing enough to help? They don't think he's doing enough to help bail him out. I don't know. That to me is where it seems like there's a misalignment in chemistry is between what's happening in net and what everyone else is doing. And I don't think any of the players are pointing fingers, but when you scroll Twitter, that's absolutely what it is. People are either falling into one camp of Georgiev needs to make a save, or how can you blame him? They're playing so poorly. Mm-hmm. And I think if that kind of finger pointing is going on internally, that's a problem.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think looking back, like I said, I watched the condensed games of the Winnipeg, Colorado matchups this year, and I think the biggest thing I noticed, and at the end of the day, this may look like a Georgiev mishap because he's the one that ultimately lets the goal in, but so many mistakes, and I feel like this is a microcosm of the year, so many mistakes came from the D's stick. Yeah. When the puck was on the defenseman's stick, they're making a bad decision with it in their own zone, and that's leaving not only Georgiev, but then the forwards who are looking to cover, and
fly the zone, yeah.
Yeah, everybody's trying to make up and clean up the mistake. Suddenly you're in chaos. And that's got to be the biggest thing that gets cleaned up, I think, for the Avalanche to win in the D zone coverage is the puck decisions from the defenseman.
Yep.
After that, you can't have the sustained pressure where you got guys scrambling across the D zone, suddenly puck watching, right? And you're looking into the corner at the guy that has the puck, and the guy you're supposed to be covering slips behind you. I saw that a couple times.
Well, and the other one, too, is where they were exactly what you're describing. They're getting lost, and suddenly there's someone walking down from the point, and they're walking and walking and walking and walking. It's like, is anyone going to
Right.
Pick that guy up.
Yeah, because the winger got caught chasing
Right.
all the way to the opposite side of where he's supposed to be covering. So, I think those two things specifically, I think, are what the Avalanche can do to clean up their D-zone coverage, therefore protect Alexander Georgiev, and suddenly not be giving up all these 4 goals, 5 goals, 6-goal games.
Yeah, well, and then you just made a comment too about like defenseman stick. For me, it's like you got to have better puck decision making below the dots. The Brandon Duhaime goal in Vegas. He's on it. He's the puck's on his backhand. He's got time to get to his forehand. He's on a penalty kill. Get it off the wall, high, hard, off the glass. He's got time. There's nobody coming right behind him. But instead, he kind of makes this panic backhand floater that the Vegas defenseman is able to glove down, keep it in, and they kept the play alive, and it led to a goal. And like that's just little stuff where, what? You have time. Why are you making that decision? And that, it's that type of stuff that it's like I don't know what you point to, but like you said, it's the leaky defense, dude. It's the details in their own end that aren't sharp. And then for me, and again, we don't have this on the rundown, but you're talking about things that you got to get cleaned up. It's the special teams. They're getting fucking hammered in the special team battle every night. Their last 4 games of the season, they finished with below a 50% penalty kill. Or right at best.
The penalty kill has struggled.
And so you're saying every time you take a penalty, you know what I mean? Like it's a 50-50 coin flip if you're going to give up a goal. That's terrible. That's absolutely brutal, dude. Like against a team like Winnipeg who isn't going to despite what happened the other night, like offensively, the Avs absolutely get the tap instead of Winnipeg. You know what I mean? Like they have the big guns. The Avs should be able to score more goals. But if you're going to give them a power play goal 1 out of every 2, you're completely just giving that advantage right back to them. And then not only is their penalty kill been bad, they're not scoring at all in the power play.
Yeah, and the power play is going to be pivotal in this series because that's the way you get to Connor Hellebuck. Actually, before I get into that, there's one more thing I think the Avalanche really got to clean up on the defensive side of things, but it starts with offense. Their zone entries have to be on point because if not, they operate with such speed that if you mess up a zone entry, 2 of your guys are still flying and can't get back in time, right?
Yeah, you don't have time to reload.
Yeah, on the other side, when they do have a successful zone entry and somebody misses the net so hard that it starts to ring around the boards and you're starting the rush for the other way, again, your forwards are so aggressive that they're not getting back in time. So just the third thing I wanted to throw in there that the Avalanche got to make sure they're doing against Winnipeg if they're going to give themselves a chance.
So what do we say? Got to fix the leaky D.
Yeah, I said can't get lost in your own D zone.
Yep.
Better decision-making from the defenseman.
Yep. Special teams.
And zone entries and special teams.
So four things. And like, truthfully, dude, I don't think any of that stuff is like, none of that stuff sounds irreparable to me.
Right.
Like that's all stuff that a veteran group like this, it's not going to happen all at once, but like if they can come out in game 1 and fix 2 of those things, all right, you feel pretty good. You're going to put yourself in a much better spot to be successful. And then if by that first home game, can you fully clean up another one? And then you're down to like, all right, we've got one hole to plug every game, and that's what it's going to be every night. Winnipeg's going to have a hole that they, we're not playing well here. This isn't, we weren't great on this tonight. You're going to have that. The Avs have too many every night where they're trying to, every time you plug this hole, another one's springing loose. The Avs got to get a few of these patched up and just know that there's one thing we're working to be better at every night.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be tighter leashes, right? Again, I keep referencing the matchups from the season that the Avalanche had with Winnipeg. I want to throw those out the window. Those shouldn't be any basis for how we're feeling heading into this round.
100%.
So many errors of goals the Avalanche gave up against Winnipeg were done by guys like Sam Malinsky, Caleb Jones, Bowen Byram playing on the wrong side that he's used to, right? These are mistakes that can easily
Ryan
be
Johansson not being able to move.
these are mistakes that can be protected, or just guys that can be protected in a playoff setting, much shorter leashes, etc. So, yeah, I think just Coach Bednar using the personnel, having everything turned up a notch because it's playoff, I think will really benefit this team. And, again, the usage of some guys or lack thereof is also going to benefit this team.
Well, and look, we got to wait to hear on Jonathan Drouin.
Yeah.
That looked to me like it was maybe a precautionary thing, but
you never know.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a couple things this morning. I don't know. Hope not. If Jonathan Drouin is okay, I believe Sam Girard's going to be good to go. If you've got all your bodies, right? If you're healthy, you and I talked about it after deadline. Like, this is a deep group.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the depth that you didn't have last year. You'll have hopefully a little bit more health. You got a deep D-core. Like, this is a team that is built to go on a run here. And you got a coach that knows how to press the right buttons and likes to utilize his depth. Like, there's so many things here that I love about what this Avalanche team has going into this first round. But you can't watch what they've done over the last week and a half and feel super confident. You just can't.
Agreed. So back to the offensive side of things and the importance of having the power play rolling for this first round of the playoffs. That's how you got to beat Hellebuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to beat a Vezina caliber goaltender, not even Vezina caliber, he's going to win it this year.
Mm-hmm.
A Vezina winning goaltender, again, you're going to have to take advantage of those power plays where you have two guys in front of the net. One of them is unprotected, where you have the chaos that McKinnon and McCarr and Rantanen can create by passing it amongst themselves up top.
That high cycle, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be pivotal for the Avalanche to be able to score goals because we've seen that they've had a hard time scoring goals against this Winnipeg group. They need the high flyers to fly high, and they have to be able to make it tough on Hellebuck.
Yeah.
Rebounds. Take away his eyes.
Get into the front of the net, dude. So last night on the broadcast, Jared Bednar had called his team out in the second period. He said, first period was great. I don't know what this is. This is sloppy. We don't, we're not engaged. What did he say? I sent you the quote this morning. Not that we're not taking it seriously.
Trying to do too much.
Trying to do too much. Like just, weird shot selection and the perfect pass and one more and, one-timer. No, I'm going to touch back. No, take the one-timer. You got two guys going to the net. And then right after Jared Bednar said all of that, Miles Wood goes out, digs the puck out along the wall. Ross Colton wins another battle. Beautiful pass right out front. Zach Parise, with his toes in the blue paint, punches it home. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the blueprint. That's it right there. When it's getting tough to score goals, that's what it is. The Avs were flying all over the place in the first period, scored 4 goals, 3 beautiful goals, and then it got a little bit harder. The room got a little bit tighter, and there wasn't as much space to wheel in that second period. And it was the line going out there and saying, okay, cool, we're not going to wheel then. We're going to grind our way to the front of the net. You got to do that. And then where it feels like the Avs, and I haven't looked at the numbers recently, so I don't know. Maybe I'm going to say this and there's going to be an analytics person that's like, you idiot. In this series particularly, because the Jets aren't going to be able to match the speed, you've got to get that transition game back going.
That's what exactly I was going to say next, because that's what we've seen from them at their best. Mm-hmm. Flying through that neutral zone, the decision-making from the defense is smart, tape to tape, and then allows a guy like Nathan McKinnon to just hurdle through the neutral zone and into the offensive zone and maybe even get the D turned around because he's so dang fast.
And our boy Corey Massasak from Denver Post, who my latest guest on This Is Fun, new episode came out today. Make sure you're going to look at it or watch it, listen to it, whatever. He's always in awe of how many times it looks like there's going to be a fast break, an odd man rush going against the Avs. And how there's something in their system that they can just kind of take that away.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my gosh, 3-on-1. Oh, never mind. Devon Taves is going back up the ice. And that to me is where I think what you're talking about with like the poor defensive zone decision making has had its biggest toll. Is they're turning these pucks over. And normally we see them turn those pucks over. And hey, you had 3 guys going this way. Oh shit, we're already going back that way because it was such a smart defensive play. Quick pass, quick up the ice. Now it's a 3-on-2 going the other way. It's McKinnon, Rantanen and McCarr's coming late, and they're dangerous. Like, that's the part they're missing. They're stopping those rushes, and then I feel like the decision-making just, not every time. Sometimes they're making good plays to get back up the ice, but it's just not with that consistency. 2 years ago, if you made a mistake against the Avalanche, it was either in the back of your net or your goalie was needing to come up with a big save. The Avs aren't taking advantage of mistakes. They're not taking the free play like they have in the past. And again, so that's maybe another thing too, where, talking about Hellebuck, hey, he's a great goaltender. Nathan McKinnon has kind of had his way with Hellebuck in the past.
Well, and that's why. He's a great goaltender. He's big. He's fundamentally sound. His positioning is great. But when you have size, you sacrifice speed.
Mm-hmm.
So speed, when you have Nathan McKinnon style speed, the speed that we know Casey Middlestat is capable of coming at you, that's another weakness for a guy like Connor Hellebuck. 1-on-0.
Yeah.
If you can get him 1-on-0, I feel very good about Nathan McKinnon's chances on any breakaway that they can generate in this upcoming series.
And so, for me, I think it's you got to get back to the front of that. When you're establishing the zone, you got to get guys there. You got to get bodies in front.
2 at least.
2, and you've got to be getting tips, and you got to be fighting for every rebound. And this is maybe where they would miss a guy like JT Compher and Logan O'Connor. Honestly, like those 2 guys will go to the net and take a beating. They will just get their ass kicked in front of the net, and then suddenly they pop up and there's a loose puck and they punch it in. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what they need someone to do. Cogliano, Zach Parise, Yakov Trenin, Ross Colton, Miles Wood, who's the one that I missed? Oh, Val Nichushkin, Arturi Lehkonen. They need to live. All those guys that I just named need to live in the Zach Hyman area.
Yeah, I think if you're experienced with the game of hockey, if you've played hockey, you might be listening to us right now and being like, yeah, everything you're saying is just what you
obvious,
do to win a hockey game. But that's exactly it, right? It's about simplification.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting back to the basics and just doing the small things right. I remember earlier this year, Jared Bednar had his own little mini Patrick Waugh moment when he says, what is that? Get the puck deep and get to work.
Yeah.
Right? That's the kind of mentality they have to bring to this series is the simplification, the hard work, because that's what's done it for them in the past.
Stop just trying to be better than the other team and go work for it. And I realized, I stopped myself, they need to do what we just said. Get into the front of that ugly hockey. That's when you're in the zone. I want to see them transitioning from defense to offense quickly, moving through the neutral zone with pace, with speed. What did you and I talk about before that last Winnipeg game? We said, ooh, this should be a fun one, home ice up for grabs. And we talked about it, and I said, look, if the Avs can make the Jets play with some speed, the Jets are going to struggle. They can't hang with the Avs. I said, if the Jets are able to slow it down in between the blue lines, heavy on the wall, not that the Avs can't play on the wall, they're fine, but like if you're having to do that, that's not how they want to play. I said, if you let the Jets establish the style of play, it's not going to be good.
Right, they're a heavy forechecking team, and that's what creates those defensive errors, those defensive bad decisions is a little bit of pressure. So you just have to make sure you keep those mistakes to a minimum. No losing pucks on the wall. No letting the puck slip by you just because you missed it. Something that we've seen a couple times lately. So it's just about fine-tuning everything and really just raising their level of play to playoff caliber hockey.
Yeah.
That's all it's going to take.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, this team is capable of it.
Yeah.
This team is built to win.
To do this, yeah.
It's just a matter of if they can execute. And boy, is that a word we've heard all season long.
Yeah,
execution.
Yeah. Well, and if they go out in the first round, that's what I think will be the most disappointing for, man, like honestly, I was listening to that ESPN broadcast. Steve Levy, Ray Ferraro, like they are down on the Avs. Like, there's a lot of national media that is really down on the Avs. But I think for the people that are around here that we see it up close every day, that's what will be the most disappointing thing if it goes the way we were saying it has the potential to go earlier of, round one and you're done. What I think will suck the most about that is we know this team is built to go deep.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got the guys in there that are capable of doing it. And I even with everything we said about Georgiev, do I believe he has the ability? Yeah. Yeah, I believe he has the ability to be a good enough goaltender to win a Stanley Cup behind this group.
Yeah, it's just about what version of him shows up, right?
And I think that's honestly where I'm kind of at right now. April 19th, Friday, April 19th, is this Avs team could beat the Jets in 5. They could also lose in 5, and it's a matter of which one of them shows up. And if, again, we were having the same conversation 2 years ago. The one that needed to showed up and did not leave. If you get that again, I'm not saying they're going to win, but they're going to go on a run, and they're going to make, they're going to get past the Jets. I just wonder where they're at between the ears. Do they have that belief?
Yeah, I mean, no matter what happens, I wish we were more rah-rah here and getting more amped up and positive. We just got to call it like it is, and the feelings that we've had over the last couple of weeks are just coming out.
Well, and look, like I am. We got there off the top. Like, I am rah-rah and positive. Like, I'm super excited, and I do genuinely. I'm not just saying this to now give us some. After you said that, but like, I think this team. You and I have said it. Again, April 19th. If they're not in the West, like if they don't go back to the Western Conference Finals, I think it's disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
That's how highly I think of this group. I think they absolutely can do it.
And it's me that's more of the negative attitude right now. My glass is half empty.
I'm with you. My glass is half empty too, but do you not feel that same way? Like just knowing what you know about this group and knowing the guys and being in that locker room every day. Like, do you not think that they should
Yeah.
Go on a run?
They're capable of it, no doubt. My confidence level in their current form, I think, is what's having me doubt them right now.
I'm with you 100%.
I want to reference last year's Eastern playoff bracket.
Okay.
Right? Coming into it, I remember all of us being like, oh, I can't wait. This is going to be the gauntlet. The Eastern Conference is going to be so fun. And what happens, the 8 seed goes all the way and makes it to the final. It kind of feels that same way in the West to me. Like, I don't think there's any one team that we can say, this is the team this year. It's anybody's. And for that reason, I think the Avalanche, all they have to do is just turn it on a little bit better. Do all of these things that we've brought up during this podcast a little bit better, and they're going to be just fine. They're going to be competing along with all the other teams. It's not like, oh, wow, Winnipeg's about to blow them out. This is going to be ugly and boring. The Avalanche don't even deserve to be in the playoffs. No, this is just anybody's year.
See, and I agree with that on the whole. I think the Pacific Division sucks. I think if the Edmonton Oilers aren't back in the Eastern Conference Final, Ken Holland needed to be fired 2 years ago. Ken Holland should be fired before he leaves the building if they don't get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. They should immediately fire their brand new coach. They should trade Leon Draisaitl. They should just completely start over.
Yeah, I feel like every team you can make a.
No way, dude.
Except for the Kings, I think every team in the West you can say, hey, this team can make it.
Edmonton, Edmonton Oilers, if you're listening, you will never, ever have an easier path back to the Western Conference Finals. They got to go through LA and then a Vancouver team that is way overachieving.
Part of me almost wanted to take the Predators in that series.
Me too. So again, you're either going to have to go through LA and Vancouver or LA and Nashville. Like, Edmonton should arrive in the Western Conference Finals with only a couple losses under their belt. If they are actually the team they think they are. Everyone knows, who's been listening to me the last couple years, I'm hard out on the Edmonton Oilers. I'm picking them to get swept in every series because that's just who they are. But on paper, those are hilariously the only two teams I don't feel the way that you described are LA and Vancouver. I think Vegas has had a really weird year that are capable of getting hot and going on a run. Colorado, Winnipeg, Dallas. Again, I'm out on Edmonton in principle, but give them their due. it's going to be a crazy run in the West this year in terms of like, not like, oh, it's going to be a bloodbath, but like, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea how this is going to shake out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fun.
Yeah, this is fun.
This is fun. East, so I don't know. It's just a weird. It's been such a weird year. Who's your favorite? Like, who's your Cup favorite right now? You.
Carolina.
I didn't think you'd be able to answer that confidently.
I've been thinking about it over the last couple days.
All right.
Well, remember last year you interviewed all the media members on their Cup final picks?
Mm-hmm. I'm
like, what if Jesse does that again? I got to be ready.
Well, I think you would have been more part of the planning for that this year had we been doing that. I don't think anyone got it right last year.
Oh, no, I was way off. I picked L.A. in the final. They got bounced first round to the Edmonton Oilers.
But they should have beat the Oilers.
And I picked Boston on the other side, also out first round. So I did terrible.
Well, a bunch of people picked Boston. I think there was a couple Colorado-Boston picks. Yeah, a couple Edmontons in there. I don't know, man. I just think it's so wide open this year.
Yeah, and if it was predictable, this wouldn't be fun.
Right.
And this is fun.
Genuinely, there are two teams that if they won the Stanley Cup, I would be surprised. Would you like to guess who they are? 3 teams.
The LA Kings have to be one. No?
Nope.
You wouldn't be surprised. Well, then I give up.
Just because they've been there. Like, they've been a good playoff team the last couple of years.
Nashville has to be one because they were supposed to be in a rebuild,
yeah.
Get rid of both of their top 2 centers, and somehow they're a better team. Ryan O'Reilly, all the difference.
Nashville's one of them. One more West and one more East. Do you want to take any more guesses, or should I just end this misery? Well, you were about to make one more guess. Now I want to hear one more. I was going to
say Tampa.
Oh, no. Interesting. Nashville, Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, yeah, Washington.
If any of those three teams won, I'd be like, holy shit, I did not see that coming. Any other of the 13 teams, I'd be like, yeah, had a good year.
Hats off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For real.
Mm-hmm.
That's how, like, usually every year when you go into the playoffs, it's like, it'll be one of these 4, at bare minimum, there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I do. Carolina's another team I don't believe in.
I agree with you. I've been bitten by them in several years past, which is why last year I switched to Boston. But I just think this year feels like the way the Avalanche felt in 2022.
Think so.
The trade deadline moves that they made were strong, made them a better team, even though they were already really good. And if you just look at that roster, man, top to bottom, you're like, whoa.
See, to me,
these are some names.
They are, but like, are they though? I
would say so.
They don't have anyone in the A tier. I take it back. They got a bunch of guys in the A and B tier. They have no one that's elite. They have no one that, like, hey,
the A+ tier.
Right. Yeah. Things have tightened up. We need someone to, like, that's one thing that Nathan McKinnon can do. And you go back to the Avs Blues game 5 where he scored the hat trick and then they blew it anyways. But like that goal that he scored was just like, okay, all right, if we can't hold a lead, I'll just go do it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And he's that good of a player that he can skate from one end to the other through 5 guys and just score a goal. The Hurricanes just don't have that guy. And then their goaltender is like getting hit by the door on his way in a little funny away from being out for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I respect your opinion, but like you said, I mean, there's no clear cut
favorite.
Totally.
I was mostly just like, when you said Carolina, it mostly spurred the thought of like, man, these guys.
So who's your pick out of the East?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Dude, out of principle, I picked Tampa in every series up until last year because someone in the East finally beat them 3 years later. I think New York could get there.
Yeah, you could definitely make a case for New York. I mean, they've been through the ups and downs of the last several years, right? Which I find super important in learning how to get there. Florida, you could say the same thing about.
Yep.
And shit, even Carolina, you can say that.
Florida, I think, is my team in the East.
It's a great pick.
That's probably
You
my
know,
team
I
of the
like
East.
Florida,
Yep.
and if I'm rooting for any team, I'm rooting for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
But sometimes it hasn't seemed like they're putting together the magical year that they had last year, and that's really what it's about. Who can get magic?
Well, yeah, 100%.
Who can get some magic along with your high-end hockey right now?
And that is the part that should bring a little bit of a deep breath to fans out there. The Avs had a very good season. I asked you that question earlier because the regular season was successful. They had a great regular season. And now you are at the point of the year where you have to earn it, right? You got to work. You got to put in the work. You got to be willing to go through the gauntlet that is the NHL playoffs. But also, starting tomorrow, a large part of it is who's the luckiest? Who gets the most bounces?
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be who wins. And who has the most magic that follows them. But
basically just one giant game of Plinko that takes a month to
genuinely,
complete.
dude. Genuinely. And you earn your bounces by working hard. No one saw Sergei Bobrovsky turning the clock back 10 years last summer. But that last year is actually why the Florida Panthers are my pick. Because I think that was like, okay, now you did the crazy miracle run. Now you went through it. Now your guys are, a little bit more scarred.
And they got better. They got rid of some scrubs and added some talent.
Yeah. That's all I got.
So out of the West?
Oh, I'm sorry. You just asked for me out of the East.
I know. Yeah, I did. Now I'm asking you out
You know,
of the
man,
West.
I'll take the homer pick. I think we're going to have a 96 Cup final rematch.
Oh, that'd be fun. Boy, would I love that.
Oh, I know.
I won't come back, I don't think.
You and me both. But dude, that's after the kind of doom and gloom pod we had. That's there you go. Like that's my glass half full prediction. I think the Avs have the ability to make it there. I think they've got the players to do it, especially if they're healthy. It's just about putting it together and finding a little bit of magic, and I think they can do it.
Fair enough.
That's all I got. That's it. Who's your West pick?
I'm going to go with my head and not my heart here, and I think the Dallas Stars. I think they're just equipped. A lot, like I said, out of those guys out of the East, the Dallas Stars have been through the ups and downs. They made it to the final in the bubble. They know what it takes to get there. They're just missing that last little push, and I just feel like
Jake Ottinger's got to keep the wheels on.
It has to. He's looked better this year, though, at least compared to his playoffs, and I'm a big believer in that, like I said earlier, big boy hockey that I think Dallas loves to play. Not only do they know how to, they're experts at it.
Dallas, Carolina, Colorado, Florida.
We'll probably both be wrong somehow.
Almost certain of it.
So can't wait for you to tell me how wrong I am. Last thing we got to get to, Pavel Francouz officially announces his retirement. You and I had heard some things through the grapevine that this is no surprise to us.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that we want to wish him well any less because he's fantastic, one of my favorite players I've ever covered.
Yep.
Funny how him, Calvin Pickard, two backup goalies, are two of my favorite guys I've ever covered. But it's just because they've been genuine, nice, awesome to talk to. And I'll never forget that hug he gave me after the Stanley Cup final when he was, had a few.
A little sauce. Yeah.
A little is a short.
No, dude, 100%. Like I tweeted out this morning, he's favorite guy that I've ever covered. I truly, truly, truly believe that he was someone that could have been a number one in the NHL. I really thought that was maybe even the plan. Was for them to eventually get him there. I think the injuries kind of hampered that, and the Avs said, hey, we maybe got some injury stuff that we got to make sure that we're set in goal. But I always thought very highly of him as a player. He was always a super nice guy. You get a guy like this every couple years. He greets us before anybody says anything to him. Or, when he'd walk into the locker room, hey boys, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Always just a really nice guy. Sucks that the career came to an early end, but happy for him. He got to play a huge role in the Stanley Cup championship, got to lift a cup, and got to play out the dream of living in the NHL. So great for him. Happy that he got to accomplish all that stuff. And, congrats on retirement. Wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope he continues to find success and thrive in life and not say, oh, no, hockey's over for me. What do I do now? But it was interesting. He said how his body decided for him that he was done. I can relate so much. I haven't played goaltender in 4 years for a similar reason. And it's tough to kind of navigate. It's tough to accept. Like, hey, I've done this my whole life, and now I'm just done doing it. Not only for him, it gave him a living.
Yeah.
And a very good one at that. So, I just hope for the mental side of it that he doesn't struggle through having to give up the dream.
And you hope that with having as much time to process it as he has, that this was a decision that he's kind of been able to come to slowly. And it's not just like, hey, you're done playing hockey today. But, it's been something he's working on. But, nothing but the best for Frankie.
Is he active on social media? Can we slip him a DM and say, hey, we got an opening here at Guerilla Sports if you want it?
That was the first thought that went through my mind. We'll need to get out to Czechia this summer and go recruit him.
Give him a pitch.
Yeah.
5 reasons why you should join Guerilla Hockey with JJ and Jesse.
And Pavel.
Well, I hope we gave you enough reasons to join and to join us next time. It's time. We're ramping up our coverage, so you'll see a lot more of us over the next week, hopefully several weeks.
Yes.
Yep. We'll see how it unfolds. It's time. The roller coaster is here. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. This has been Guerilla Hockey with JJ and Jesse. See you later.
Bye.